Hi, you've clicked on to today's tropical tidbit for Monday, August 27th. Here we are with Isaac in the eastern Gulf of Mexico now, and the circulation's right about here, still not quite aligned with the convection here on the southeastern side. Yesterday it actually became decoupled again. We had the surface circulation south of Key West, the mid-level circulation north of Key West, and they weren't actually aligned. They've become better, so overnight the system jumped a little bit farther north. But notice we still have dry air coming in from the southeastern quadrant and getting entrained into the eastern side of the system. This is not so much wind shear because you can see the outflow coming to the southeast. The wind shear from the little upper low down here was affecting it a little bit last night, but it doesn't look like wind shear is doing anything to it this morning. It looks like dry air just ripping apart the structure on this eastern side, and therefore the pressure hasn't fallen a lot overnight. It's down to 988 millibars and has not fallen significantly since yesterday. It's about 6 millibars lower than it was 24 hours ago. If that pace continues, we'll have a sub 980 millibar storm by tomorrow and down close to 975 by landfall. But the questions arise now as to how this is going to affect the intensity of the storm at second landfall. And as this comes towards Louisiana, I expect it will try to mix out this dry air a little bit, but we've talked about this. The storm is very large, and when we have circulations this large, they can protect themselves from land masses like Cuba. It survived Cuba very well because of its size, but it can also limit the rate of intensification because it can pull in a lot of dry air from around itself. Because it is so large, it pulls in a lot of air, and if there's any dry air in proximity, it starts to have problems. Right now you can see the flight level winds from the current recon plane in the system showing the track of the center moving like this. A little bit of a jog to the west of the end right now, but in general a northwesterly track. All of the colors that are not orange, even the yellows, are below 50 knots at flight level. So there's really not a lot of impressive winds around the core right now. It just isn't tightening in that fashion that you want to see if you're going to have a developing hurricane. So this is still a tropical storm at about 65-mile-per-hour winds and is having a little bit of trouble getting going right now. Here's the water vapor imagery, and the upper level low is over here over the northwestern Yucatan, and this is backing farther away with time. As it gains distance away from the storm, upper level conditions are becoming very favorable, and they're pretty favorable now. It's just that there's still dry air over the northwestern part of the Caribbean that's getting caught by the storm and punched in. This is basically just an exaggeration of the struggles that I talked about the storm having yesterday. It's taking a little bit longer to overcome those struggles than I expected and is not a hurricane yet. It should become a hurricane over the Gulf here, but the good news for the North Gulf Coast is this isn't going to be able to become as strong as it could have, and probably not a major hurricane before landfall, which is great news for the Central Gulf Coast. You can see another upper level low to the southeast providing an outflow channel equatorward, and this upper low here is going to be keeping outflow healthy on the western side, and you can see it expanding to the northeast as well. So we have good outflow for the system. It just needs to get rid of some of this dry air and develop an eye wall. If it can do that, the winds are going to pick up considerably because the pressure it has right now is a characteristic of a Category 1 hurricane. It just needs to get the winds to catch up, which it won't do until the core tightens. Now regarding the track of this storm, right now the models are getting tighter clustered here, still spread out between which part of Louisiana or Mississippi the landfall will take place. If we look at the loop one more time, if we turn on the NHC forecast from 5 a.m., the 11 a.m. is now out, but this is the 5 a.m. track points. You can see the center is northeast of them here, and I think that's going to continue. That general correction will be just north of the 5 a.m. forecast towards the Mississippi-Louisiana border, very close to the city of New Orleans here. And the European is up into Mississippi with the track from last night, the 0Z. I won't bother putting it on. It has a 970 millibar storm making landfall right there. And the problem with the system now, we're getting towards the point where most of the observations needed to compute the track of the storm we have over land. There's upper air soundings over the land analyzing the ridge and the trough north of the storm. We have all that data. The models are starting to zero in on this, and the track looks like it's good from yesterday. I'm not going to have to really shift it. Finally, I don't have to shift it. But looking at the upper pattern here, we have the ridge northwest of the storm, the trough northeast of the storm. Again, this is in the sweet spot here near Louisiana. And the problem with this situation is that it's still feeling the trough. It's not going to go plummeting westward into Texas. The GFS still insists that this could end up in eastern Texas after Louisiana landfall, so that could be an issue to watch out for. There's still some uncertainty in the track after landfall. But either way, I think it's going to slow down a lot as it comes ashore. And the European last night showed this, where it took 24 hours to get from the mouth of the Mississippi just inland by 100 miles or so. And with this trough here, it's going to be very slowly working its way towards the eastern periphery of this ridge as this builds eastward, eventually allowing it to come up the western side of the ridge in the central part of the country. But it could take a few days for it to make significant progress into the center of the country, and a lot of rain could fall with the system in the southern part of the central U.S. And you can see over 15-inch amounts in the blue here showing up on the HPC quantitative precipitation for the next 5 days over Mississippi, Mobile Bay, and clipping the mouth of the Mississippi as well. So lots of water coming down from the system, and it may be the water, the rainfall, that becomes the bigger issue, and how Isaac is remembered if it can't ramp up very fast before landfall. So my forecast hasn't really shifted from yesterday. This is the only thing that's really changed here is the intensity forecast has been adjusted downward, because I did expect this to be a minimal Cat 1 hurricane. By this morning, it has not become that, so it is struggling a little bit more than anticipated. But the idea that this wasn't necessarily going to become a major hurricane before landfall looks like it's holding out here, and this should start to strengthen a little more today and to become a hurricane by 24 hours from now. I think it really should be a hurricane, and then the strongest strengthening will be occurring right before landfall, and this will be a somewhat rare storm in terms of the recent future. We've had most of these hurricanes weakening upon landfall in the United States. Almost every hurricane I can remember back through 2005 was weakening upon landfall in the United States. So this is going to be strengthening upon landfall, which means that it can take some people by surprise. If it's a strengthening Cat 1 approaching Category 2 status like I have it here, the upper end of the Category 1 range, it can seem stronger than it is, in the same way that a weakening hurricane, for example, Dennis in 2005 came in as a upper end Category 2, but was weakening upon landfall and didn't really seem like more than a Cat 1 for a lot of places. So sometimes a tightening storm can be a little bit more vigorous than an equivalent category that is weakening. So it's something to keep an eye on. This is going to be a nasty storm coming ashore for sure, and you can see the track slowing down here. These are 12 hours of these forecast points are 12 hours apart, showing the speed of the system decreasing, and this could mean a lot of rainfall for the central Gulf Coast. And again, the cone spreads out a little bit here towards the coast given the model spread and the uncertainty with how it will interact with the sweet spot between the ridge and the trough, but we are starting to narrow this down, and the landfall should be near southeastern Louisiana or Mississippi. So this will be something to keep an eye on very closely as it nears shore. Hopefully people are prepared. Alright, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.